Today, I'm going to talk about something different. I'm not going to talk about polls or elections specifically, although maybe a little in passing. What we're going to do instead is talk about a very specific policy issue that I think is very important. Immigration. Specifically, the Labour Party's policy on immigration. Now, you may have seen over the past few weeks that Kirstama came out on TV and he said that any family member of a child who crosses the channel in a small boat is going to be treated as a terrorist. And when people like me pointed out this policy and said how abysmal it was, how outrageous, we got a lot of people saying, Labour can't seriously believe that, right? He must have misspoken. It must be, the audio version of a typo. Like, that can't be real. And, for some people it's just a point-blank refusal to believe anything bad, but for a lot of people, Labour being right-wing on immigration is really difficult to understand, especially when you consider that, in the public's mind, Labour is the party that's friendliest to immigration. We see this in polls. They're rated by a majority of people to be close to migrants. But if you actually look at the record of the Labour Party in government, and most importantly of their last Prime Minister who won with a landslide, Tony Blair, a man who is very close to Kirstama at the moment, politically and in an advisory capacity, then you start to get very, very worried about what Labour's actually going to do in power. On that note, I want to begin with one particular statistic. And this shows the number of migrants in detention centres in 1997, the year Blair came to power, and 2007, the year he resigned. And as you can see, it went up from less than 400 to nearly 2,100 by the end of his time as Prime Minister. The headline statistic that everybody will point to, whichever side of the debate that you're on, is going to be deportation figures. And as you can see from this very helpful chart, the number of deportations rose every year. It rose from 6,000 in 1997 to 21,000 at their peak in 2004. And it's never risen that high ever again, not even under David Cameron and Theresa May, and not under Boris Johnson, or Priti Patel, or Suella Braverman. It's not just, generally speaking, migrants whose lives are turned upside down by deportations, though. In 1997, under John Major, because he was still Prime Minister for, the first half of that year, 400 children were deported by Britain. In 2004, the number of children being deported every year was 1,900. I don't think that that's a record one should be particularly proud of. And you'll notice, by the way, that after 2010, it doesn't drop off completely. It virtually disappears. And that is not a coincidence. It is because the Conservative Party and the Liberal Democrats, when they came in, they formed a coalition. They both agreed that detaining and deporting children was wrong. The Prime Minister of this century, with the biggest record, the biggest average number of children deported per year, the record doesn't go to a Conservative, although I guess maybe you could see him as this. It goes to Tony Blair, who on average, across his whole premiership, 10 years, deported 1,000 children every single year. But perhaps the single most important aspect of Blair's legacy when it comes to migration is literal infrastructure. Now, when people talk, and they do talk a lot, about how New Labour laid the groundwork, built the infrastructure for the Tories to do a lot of things that they ended up doing, whether it was on benefits or cracking down on civil liberties, they're talking in terms of legislation, precedents, that sort of thing. But when it comes to migration, infrastructure is literal. If you look at who's currently detained in detention centres across England, we can see that 91% of the migrants currently detained are held in facilities that were built by the Labour Party. The literal brick and mortar foundations of the current asylum and immigration system was built by New Labour, built by Tony Blair. And all of it is only possible because of him. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate you checking out a different kind of content to what I usually do, and I will see you next time.